I'm meeting again with one of the best professors I ever met. He was my professor, my teacher, and I enjoyed his class. I also want to tell you that he is a published author. His book is The Magical Universe. And he also he has his own website and he's a blogger. Probably he will tell you, it's better if he tells you about himself. Professor Bruce McGraw. Welcome to the channel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm a retired philosophy, religious studies uh, teacher in the community colleges, and I have written a book. Just show it here. It's a short one called "The Magical Universe: Answering the Call of Climate Change for Personal and Global Transformation." And also, I write blogs that I post on my website, but also on Medium.com and Substack.com. So if you're interested, you can check those out. And so that's a little
Yeah,
bit
and
about
I will put the links in the description so people can reach them. Um, and I think that's a good way to start this discussion. The climate change, for example, we know that a Trump presidency would be very bad for environment, for pollution, for climate, and probably we will start becoming like I hope I don't want to say it, but like China, which is like a very polluted country. Uh, because of like under any economic excuses. So what do you think, Professor, about what do you think, Bruce, about uh, a second Trump presidency for our environment?
well, I think it's going to be a real disaster for the environment. Trump, I think, came out and said people gave him, if the fossil fuel industry gave him $1 billion, he would pull back all of Joe Biden's climate change regulations, and uh, and probably doesn't even need $1 billion to do that. He'll do it anyway. And to me, if he's in power for 4 years and actually can get all that in there, it's more than just being, how we'll look like China with a lot of pollution, or India. It could be the death of the planet. I mean, we're seeing this last year, 2024, is again is set to become, this year is supposed to become the most the highest temperature ever recorded, and I think it's going to replace 2023, which is the current highest temperature, the most pollution ever recorded. So we're going to break all kinds of records again this year, and I don't know, how much longer, if we're going to pull out all the regulations. It looks pretty dim. And I'm really kind of upset that the Democrats didn't run on that. I mean, to see that somebody was so transactional that they would sell the fate of the planet for their own personal gain. I mean, you can't get much lower than that. And my guess is if somebody sat there and asked Trump, by doing that, you probably, creating the death of our civilization on this planet, he'd give the same response he did, when the rioters on January 6th were chasing down his vice president, Mike Pence, with, to hang him. And somebody mentioned that to Trump, and he said, "So what?" So I think if you said this to Trump about, ending the planet, he would say also, "So what?" Because he'll say, "Hey, I'm old. I'm not going to be here, so why should I care?" So this is the kind of person we elected as president, and it's really disconcerting. I first got a sense of Trump back in 2016 when he was running for the first time, and it had to deal with the Central Park Five uh, case in New York, where these five black teens were accused of killing a female jogger who was jogging through Central Park. And they arrested him. And shortly thereafter, Trump was putting out full page ads in the New York Times calling them for them to be executed. And then, I mean, the evidence I think was suspect to begin with, but then the real killer came out and admitted it. And then the DNA evidence and everything supported that. And so they released the Central Park Five, exonerated, they didn't do it. But Trump continued to take out ads in the New York Times calling for their execution, even though it was shown, you know, categorically that they didn't do it. And so that was my first thing before Trump even became president. Here's a person so divorced from reality that you can't appeal to him with reason, logic, evidence, or anything. He's a completely transactional. He lives in his own world. He's completely cut off from everything. And so, you know, why would you ever want somebody like this to be president? And I wrote one of the last articles I posted on Medium and Substack was an article, you know, something I can't remember exact title, but something, are we going to elect an insane president? And my definition of insanity at that time was somebody who was totally divorced from reality, who had no connection to reality. And that seems to define Trump exactly. In fact, his niece, Mary Trump, who is a clinical psychologist, said this, and this is a quote: "It's hard to see how anybody thinks my uncle is tethered to reality." And so to me, and we see this again with the whole January 6th and his denial of the election, despite all the evidence for that. He just, everything is transactional, and he will not accept any facts that hurt him, only accept even lies that benefit him. So I don't know. That to me is the scariest thing about Trump, that there's no way to appeal to him except to his vanity.
Yes, and I agree with you that he is he's divorced from reality, and also he's arrogant. I mean, imagine he was already arrogant, and now with this win, he's even more arrogant now, and he does not care about anything. And I suspect that we will have a real trouble in 2028, because I believe he will try to not leave office. I don't think he will leave peacefully, and from now until also 2026, which we will go to elections again. And I hope that and I think that Democrats should play more nasty this time. Like, they should even use the word thug, crazy, stupid, like in ads. Like, just say it. I mean, don't feel shy and play the nice guy. I mean, especially we discovered that the American people, I'm not saying all, but the majority voted for Trump. So uh, it seems they don't care about civility and being nice and being like respectful of others, and even when you criticize them. But they just cared for the man who breaks the law. I mean, he insults everyone. He even does not respect his own children. Like, imagine he said that I'm smarter than my kids. So, I mean, he's that selfish. So, what do you think the Democrats should do in the two next years? Like, let's say, in matters of campaigning, and what message they should, how they should deliver their message to the American people.
Well, I would agree with you. I think the Democrats played too nice with the Republicans. I was especially upset. I could see that in the vice presidential debate with Tim Walz. Instead of kind of going after some of the crazy things J.D. Vance was saying, he seemed more interested to say, "Oh, I think we agreed on this issue," and "Oh, I think we see common ground here," trying to make this thing with common ground when he had a perfect chance to start highlighting all the crazy things that J.D. Vance was saying. And the reason I actually liked Tim Walz when he was the vice president, because I saw a couple of interviews, and when he went after Vance, he did it so effectively and sort of pointed out what a fraud he was. And I was hoping we'd get some of that in the debate, but we didn't get any of that. And I think it's these Democratic handlers behind the scenes that sort of decapitated him in a way. And he followed along, I think, with what that's my guess. I don't know, but he followed along with what they said. And, I think he ended up making Vance look fairly good and reasonable, a reasonable version of Trump, which wasn't helpful. And yeah, so I would agree with you. I think the Democrats have to become much more direct. I think, you know, they relied probably too much on abortion. Abortion had won them several elections before that. It was a big issue, so they doubled down on it again. I think they had to stay with abortion, but it was clear that the economy was the big issue, and that Trump was trying to do an end run around the Democrats to appeal to the working people, which won him the election in 2016. And and that's because kind of the Democrats have, for the most part, abandoned the working people. I think Thomas Frank wrote a book called "What's the Matter with Kansas," or maybe it was "Listen Liberal," where he talked about how the change from Democrats being a class of the working party to moving over to get corporate donations began under Clinton. And ever since that, the Democrats have been more and more focused on corporations and donations rather than the working class people. And so I think that that hasn't really worked out for them. And I think they need to get back to standing up for working class people. And so, for me, I like Bernie Sanders and his approach that they need to come out and say these things more directly instead of trying to chase these campaign donations. And so some people say the Republicans are the party of the 1%, but now the top 1%, and now the Democrats have become the party of the top 10%. And then you've got the rest of the people down below. And, so it's allowed Trump to come around, identify with the working people, make him think he's on their side when he's really not. I mean, I think pretty shortly, if he institutes his tariffs, and I don't know what role Musk is going to have in running the economy, but he's talking about taking $2 trillion out of the economy, and there'll be this initial big downturn, but then everything's going to be great. I don't know. I think a lot of Trump people who think he's going to pass bills that are going to help them, I think they're going to be in for a big shock. And I think, they think inflation's bad now. They haven't seen anything yet because, as Kamala Harris did try to point out, inflation, tariffs are an inflationary uh, policy. And so those tariffs are not going to be paid by China or the other countries. They're going to be paid by the American people in the form of increased prices. And so I think maybe pretty quickly there's going to be buyer's remorse on Donald Trump. So, the House is still open. I think the odds are they say probably the Democrats won't win it, but if for some reason there's still a chance. So if they can get the House, then they can block a lot of things. And I think if things get as bad as I think they will, because his policies he want to institute are terrible, my hope is that if they can get the House, they can block things. If not, there's still other things they can do to try to block things. I think Lawrence Tribe, the great a law professor, said we still have checks and balances, and they just can't go roughshod over the Constitution right away. So there's ways to delay. So maybe we want to use one of Trump's tactics he used in his trials, where he was delay until he finally ran out the clock. Maybe the Democrats have to try that everything to gum up the works to get to the 2026 midterms, because I think things turn out the way I think they will. I think there'd be a good chance for the Democrats to regain both the House and the Senate, assuming they lost the House this time again, because in 2026, unlike 2024, where I think there was about twice as many Democratic Senate seats up for election than Republicans, in 2026 it's a lot different. I think there's many more Republican seats up, so that gives the Democrats, I think, an ideal chance to regain the Senate and hopefully regain the House. So that's my positive spin on it, that he's not going to be able to do all of this stuff right away. So
I don't know, I see that Democrats have been struggling with their elections since even the 19th. I think the golden age for the Democratic Party was between Clinton and the end of President Obama's second term. That was the golden age for the Democratic Party. But I still see them failing in fulfilling, for example, the conservatives took the Supreme Court, for example. They don't reflect the American or the majority of American people. Like many of them are open-minded. I believe they are open-minded. But the problem is, and I see that clearly now because I had experience in another country. Before I became an American, I was in an Iraqi guy. I went to elections and I discovered that people there did care about the price of tomatoes and food and stuff more than democracy or freedom, or they didn't care about it. They voted for, oh, we need to eat, we need to work. And then they lost everything. Now Iraq is like only in name is a democracy. They go to vote. Other than that, there is no democracy. So I saw the same thing happens here, like in America. That's why my shock was a big one. Like uh, Sanford and Son in the TV show says, like, oh, this is a big one. Yeah, that was a big one for me. So what do you think? I mean, don't you think that, do you think that this is really dangerous? I mean, if people care about a few $1,000s more than their own freedom or basic civil rights, equality, and so on. What do you think? Don't you think that's very dangerous?
Yeah, I think, Abraham Maslow, the famous psychologist, talked about a hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom was security, you want to feel safe, that's important. And then the next that you have your basic necessities taken care of and you don't feel you're not afraid you're going to get thrown out of your house or be hungry or things like that. So I think that's natural. And then so you sort of have to get most of the time you got to get those lower level things taken care of, and then you can start thinking about freedom. So I would agree with you there. And I think that you're right. The Democrats missed the boat, as I said before, by focusing so much on abortion. Not that I mean, I think that was a major issue and they should have focused on it, but they needed to see that most people were focused on the economy. And I think they should have focused much more on that. And, it's interesting that Bernie Sanders keeps saying, they need to get back to a working class agenda. And then you find out, a lot of people who voted for Bernie in the primaries ended up voting for Trump because for some reason they think that these two people are people they trust that actually concerned about their welfare. So I think if the Democrats go back to being a working class party, uh, they can not only ensure that basic economic necessities are taken care of, but that also that and then on top of that, you can add the democracy, and that in order to keep these policies benefit the working class people, people need to get engaged and involved and keep voting for their own self-interest and for the betterment of the country. But I think you're right. I think part of the problem when the Democrats sort of sold out to the corporations, not as bad as the Republicans. I mean, I think Kamala Harris, for all her flaws, and Joe Biden are certainly better than the Republican alternative, but they weren't good enough and they felt abandoned, and Trump was able to touch them. His anger translated into their anger, and those people felt like, finally somebody hears me, finally somebody gets me. Only, in Trump's case, he's lying to them. He doesn't care about them and they're being snookered. Whereas I think Bernie Sanders honestly cares about the working class and would institute policies as best he could in the climate that we have in
Yeah, but
Washington.
don't you think that the American people did what Samson did in the Bible? Like he destroyed the temple over the heads of everyone? Did the American people want to destroy the temple over the heads of both parties? What do you think?
By destroying the temple, what exactly do you mean?
I
What are
mean,
you for? What is the temple in your analogy there?
I mean, they don't care about the system. They put the entire American system in danger. But don't you think that they are so angry that they don't care if the two parties even go to war to each other? I mean, what Trump was saying, like for example, the messages he was sending that I will put all the enemies within, under arrest, or let the army deal with them. I mean, they even tolerated even such a language. I mean, that's very threatening, in my opinion. What do you think? I mean,
Yeah, it's definitely threatening, and we'll have to see again. You know, as Lawrence Tribe said, there are checks and balances. So it's not that he can just go start, rounding up people and doing these things to them. There are, I think, certain checks and balances. So we'll have to see if that's just Trump rhetoric, if they're actually going to push forward with it. We just don't know what's going to happen. But it is definitely a concerning statement that Trump talks about. But I think you're right in some sense. If you look at people like Steve Bannon, who has studied this theory called traditionalism, and the whole idea of traditionalism is this hatred of the modern state, the whole administrative state, and everything. And Steve Bannon and a lot of his people around him do want to just bring the whole thing down in absolute chaos. And I don't know, set up, back to some kind of a feudal, it seems like some kind of a feudal kingdom with just these people at the top, and the rest of us are these serfs and slaves underneath them. So I think there is this move that the whole modern state is a big mistake, and we need to get rid of it, and we need to crash it. And so, in that sense, I think there is a group of people who want to bring the temple down, if that's what you're referring to as the temple.
yes,
Question is how many of it. And I think most people, if they feel like they only want to bring it down if they don't feel like they any longer have a stake in the society as it is. And that's why I think, somebody like a Bernie Sanders, who's talking to the needs of the working class uh, and suffering people, may be able to get people who feel left out of the system, bring them back in. And then they, once they start feeling like they're getting some benefits from the system, they won't want to do that anymore. But as long as you throw them out, and and clearly, sort of ironically, Trump's policies, even though he's saying he cares about the working class, is basically to come in here and throw them out. He wants to, make their lives miserable and create this chaos. So, his policies are going to create that chaos. And he's going to make the people who supported him feel like, you know, they're left out of the system. I mean, it's kind of ironic in a way that it could play out like that, but it's very interesting. The whole traditionalism idea is kind of interesting, and I've been reading some of the philosophers behind that, Julius Evola and this Gernaunen, Rene Guénon, um, have written about that. And I agree. There's a lot of problems with the modern society, um, but to me, it's an evolutionary state that we have to go through with its problems to evolve out of, and not something that you can just tear down. It's sort of like, an adolescent who's getting ready to go out into the world on his own, but then all of a sudden decides, no, I'm not going to go out there. There's too many problems out there. I like it better to stay home. I'm just going to stay home and let my parents take care of me for the rest of my life. You just can't go backwards like that. So
exactly. And I think that the problem is also is that um, like over the end of the right and the end on the left, they agree sometimes on some stuff. Like, for example, I know that on the left, there are some anarchists who want to destroy the system and maybe something better will come up. And on the right, just as you explained with Steve Bannon and other guys, behind him. They want to do the same thing, but for a different purpose or goal. So I think that the American people should wake up to the reality that it will never be perfect. I mean, because we are, even with progress, we are going to see many jobs taken. Uh, Probably in the next 10 years, even doctors will stay home because AI is doing everything. Now, you just give them the results and they check your blood test and then your heartbeat, and they will tell you what you need to do. And thus, or therefore, doctors will stay home. We will not have doctors anymore. So I will leave that question for another episode maybe. But
I would just
I
say, just a response to that, I
yeah,
think
go
you're
ahead.
probably right. And probably we need we're going to have to change our economy, accommodate our economy to these changing circumstances. We can't keep the economy in the same way now because you're right. I think potentially a lot of people could be left unemployed, and that would create a lot of problems. So the economy has to take that into account and adjust so that everybody's taken care of.
Yeah, and the problem is, okay, how we will give people money if there are no jobs. I mean, how we can divide wealth with this such a huge population. I mean, who will decide who gets how much money? I mean, I think will require an entire new field of study in the future. And okay, so like I have seen many Republicans or uh, I mean MAGA guys. They always say that okay, MAGA by definition is to make America great again. And I always ask them a question that they don't answer. I tell them, okay, great, like when? Like give me like a specific date, um, a decade, an era of American history, and tell me we want to go back to that time. And also I have a problem with this notion is that they want to take us back to the past. But unfortunately, the message Kamala was offering, which was let's turn the page and start a new one and look forward. That didn't resonate. I mean, people didn't hear it. What do you think? I mean, yeah, that's another challenge to the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think she was right. We did, as you said, we don't want to go back, but all that is. I guess, maybe she could have, and maybe she did. I mean, I didn't hear all her speeches and everything, but, exactly in her mind going back, I guess it means going back to the period in the 50s or even before when, white men reigned supreme and everybody else was sort of subservient. And that's what I think a lot of these MAGA people are hoping for. And they don't like all this equality. I mean, if you're down and out, if you're white working class, it's always sort of nice sometimes. I think in the past, I think, well, there's these other people who are lower than me, but now that everybody's getting more equal in the working class, I guess some people maybe don't like that. That's one. And I think, one of the problems with Democrats and a lot of people is nobody really has a vision for the future. I mean, they talk about it in very general terms, but you don't hear like a real compelling future vision for the future because that would people would say, yeah, that's what I want. That I like that idea. I'm willing to work towards that. But we don't really we get sort of these policies here and there, we're going to give a living wage and we're going to try and give you health care and and you need to take care of those basics, but I also think you need more of an overarching vision as to where you want to go and what the future will look like and and once again, I think climate change is something that leads the way with the whole green technology and, changing everything. And to deal with climate change, it doesn't look like we're going to do it, but the world really needs to come together. And we can't stay in these little blocks fighting each other all the time. And so to really deal with this problem, we have to overcome our differences, at least temporarily, to to be able to solve the climate change problem. A lot of people used to say, well, at least if like Martians invaded, we'd all come together to fight the Martians. But climate change is kind of like the Martians right now, but it's not enough. People don't want to think about it. So, um, I was just I don't know if I can get it up here. Yeah, I got a Facebook thing in front of me, and it's got a quote, first of all, from Amy Coney Barrett talking about climate change. And she says, I've read about climate change. I would not say I have firm views on it. So, here's a Supreme Court justice who really doesn't know very much about climate change, which is kind of surprising. And then underneath it is a Greta Thunberg, the climate change person in Europe. And she says, to be fair, I don't have any views on climate change either, just like I don't have any views on gravity, the fact that the earth is round, photosynthesis, nor evolution. But understanding and knowing their existence really makes life in the 21st century so much easier. So, it's just, I don't know. To me, this is climate change is the universe's way to try to wake us up. And it's going to tell us we have to overcome these little separate identities that we keep clinging to. And we're going to have to get beyond that and see our commonalities because we're all human beings. We all have the same wants, needs, desires. We suffer the same pains. We're really so much alike in every way. And instead of just because, you're born in a different place or you have a slightly different skin color or, a different gender or whatever, we're still human beings. And so,
I
to me,
mean,
that's the evolution that needs to take place. Climate change
yeah,
is telling us to do it. And unless we do it, it's going to say, all right, well, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until, till I guess enough of us wake up and realize this is serious. And, unfortunately, even Kamala Harris was, and I guess Tim Walz were, touting fracking and continuing to drill baby drill in a sense. Their policies, I think, were better than Trump's, but just because they got in didn't mean we were going to deal with climate change as it needs to be dealt with anyway. But I thought at least with Kamala Harris, we'd have somebody who was at least reasonable that could look at a situation and make more rational decisions, whereas Trump clearly isn't, as I explained earlier.
yeah, that's I mean, one of the disappointments is that they chose uh the fake guy or the guy who only exaggerates everything. I mean, maybe the Democrats should have exaggerated too, like because people buy it. I mean, uh, that's the problem with democracy is that even though, I mean, all political systems are bad, we know that, but democracy, I mean, it's a saying, a famous saying that it is the least bad system. It's still bad, but it's better than the tyranny of the communists, like Stalin style, or Hitler, like all the way to
Tyranny,
the
right?
right. Yeah, tyranny
Better
is
than tyranny.
tyranny. Yeah. So, but people make bad choices in democracy. And the good news is that we have an election coming after 2 years, which is better than waiting 4 years doing nothing.
Right.
We still have the hope to fix some stuff or okay, like limit the damage done. But I mean, where we should go now? I mean, they bought the bad message. So what we are gonna tell them? Like we want to, should we wait until uh to see like the Trump's policies come in effect, do the damage? I'm sure they will do damage because he's doing many things, not just with economy. He's even suggested that we have religious tests for immigrants. I mean, how much stupid do you need to go? I mean, you never know. What do you think? I mean, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people think that Trump isn't going to last in office very long. A lot of people think he's not going to last more than 6 months because the people, the billionaires, I guess we could call them the oligarchs, because Trump, admires Putin, and I think he likes the way that the oligarchs have to go hand in hand to Putin to get, to allow them to do what they want to do. Of course, and then he takes big cuts out of everything. I think that's sort of what Trump wants. But I think the oligarchs, like the Peter Thiels, Peter Thiel was the one that recommended to Trump that he take J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance is this nice, young, little, some ways you could say innocent 40-year-old, and he will do the bidding of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all those people. I think that's who they really want in power. And so, a lot of people think Trump isn't going to last. Maybe, because of his health. I mean, he's old, he's overweight, he doesn't diet, he's got a bad diet, he doesn't exercise, you know, he's a heart attack or whatever waiting to happen. Or maybe just something will happen. He'll get removed from office because I really think they want J.D. Vance in power. And I was thinking one thing we could do, I actually wrote a rough draft of an article on this, is start floating the idea that all these people want J.D. Vance to be in power instead of Trump, and that he's the real one that everybody wants, and that they're trying to get rid of Trump. Well, knowing Trump and his ego and the way his mind works, if you can get that idea planted in his head, he'll get really paranoid. And that could potentially create a lot of problems in the White House, kind of come up the works as they start battling each other. Because a lot of people think just the fact, even if it's not quite like that, Trump's got this huge ego, but then these billionaires that are supporting Trump also have these huge egos. And so these egos could start clashing. And, it could be interesting to watch as these people sort of struggle for power, like Peter Thiel gave Trump money. Elon Musk is doing all this for Trump. And if Trump doesn't start listening to everything he's talking about, Elon Musk may get angry at him. I mean, there's a lot of potential there for some things to happen. And I think they'd really rather see J.D. Vance in there, because J.D. Vance isn't going to give them a hard time. If they want to do something, Trump will go, yeah, well, what's in it for me? Because he's always transactional. Whereas J.D. Vance will just do what they tell him, and he'll be smooth. And so, I don't know. There's just a thought that we'll see what happens with that. Just the dynamics seems like it could just collapse on its own weight. But again, we'll have to wait and see how that works. But yeah, I don't know. Right now, he hasn't gotten out of power. So I think the Democrats just have to kind of sit back and, I guess there's some things Biden can do to strengthen things that makes it more difficult for Trump to make changes. I think Obama did that at the end of his term when Trump came in the first time. And so I think they're focusing on all the things Biden can do to kind of block Trump and get in his way so things won't, create little roadblocks all the way along so we can delay until we get to the midterms. So right now, I don't
Yes,
know. It's still also new. I mean, it happened what is today? Today it happened it happened less than a week ago, right?
yeah,
The election. So I
exactly.
mean, as you said, I think I'm still sort of in shock. So it's like, and you hear all these people talking about different things, and we're talking about different things. It's just a whole lot to take in right now.
I will be honest with you. It felt for me like somebody dear to me have died. Like I felt that way. I remember that I had the same feeling when I was 12 and my uncle was killed, in there was a battle like between rebels and the government, and somehow some shells fell on near his house, and he died. I felt the same shock, the same sadness, the same because America is something, is an idea, it's very dear to me. It's not, America for me is not like an ethnicity, it's not a religion, it's not, it's an idea about freedom and equality, a future for humanity, that every individual has a value and the right to speak and live the way they want. But now we see this wave of these guys who want to control women. They want to control who decides what sex they are. They're men or women. I mean, uh, and but I now want to ask you about foreign policy. You see, like Russia is going ahead with they still attacking Ukraine, and the goal is not Ukraine itself. It's more than Ukraine. It's rebuilding the Soviet Union again, make the Soviet Union great again. Actually, Putin's motto. Also, China, they want to take the whole China Sea and the area. So what do you think about what I mean, what do you think about what will happen there, and what the Democrats can do to, yeah, try uh, to limit the damage or control yeah, damage control. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, foreign policy is a rough area. We just one of the things we left out, and you didn't mention it, was the whole Israeli-Gaza situation. And I think that the way Biden
Yes.
handled that and the way he is handling it has really hurt Kamala Harris, and that she wouldn't break with him. I don't know what your view on that is, but I think that was a big mistake, and I guess evidently it cost him quite a bit in Michigan and some of the other swing states. And I don't know if it would have turned the election, but it certainly lost him a lot of support. And just on a humanitarian grounds, to me, he's just totally ruined the credibility and for most of the world, since we're violating not only our own laws about giving humanitarian assistance to countries that are committing such gross violations of human rights and preventing food and medicine from going in there. We're not supposed to give them aid, so we're circumventing our own laws, plus all the international laws we're doing. And so when we get our people on there criticizing Putin and whatnot for violating all these international laws, I think to most of the world now, it sounds very hypocritical. And and it's really, and just to watch what's going on there, it's so barbarous. It's so horrible. It's just hard to believe our country is supporting this. And if we and a lot of people go, well, he's doing it, but we're giving him the arms. And we've seen in the past when the U.S. has threatened to pull the arms back from Israel, they stop doing what they're doing. And but Biden, I think made him look weak. That he'll put these red lines, and then Netanyahu just steps over them, and then he just shrugs his shoulders. And now he's got this 30-day limit for Israel blocking the aid going into Gaza, which I think ends in a couple of days. So I'll be curious to see what happens then. But people wondered, we've been knowing they've been doing this for a long time. I don't even know why he gave them 30 days. But anyway, I think that was really it. And I think and it was hard for me to vote for Harris, knowing, although I'm not sure she would have supported. I think what she should have done, if she didn't want to disagree with the Biden administration, she should have just said, and said, well, she said, when I get in there, I'll follow the law. And if she merely means that, that means she would restrict aid to Israel, because Israel will be and Israel be violating the law, and she would be violating the law to continue to arm Israel in these situations. And he says, does that mean you're going to disagree with Biden's policy? And then all she needs to go, I'll follow the law. and just say it like that. And that's all she needs to say. But that would give, I think, some hope to people who thought she might be a little different if she didn't want to like openly break with the Biden administration. So I think Biden put her in a kind of in a difficult situation with Gaza. As for the rest of it, boy, I don't know. I mean, I have a little, I look at, obviously Russia invading Ukraine was terrible, but if you go back to the beginning of the Cold War when the Soviet Union collapsed and the US, and Russia was kind of teetering and floundering around, they pledged they weren't going to extend NATO. And then I think they extended NATO to I don't know how many more countries, tens, maybe 20, maybe 30 extra countries. I'm not sure, but a lot. And it took NATO right up to the border of Russia. And Putin, I think, had said, don't put NATO to the border of Russia or there's going to be problems. But we just did it anyway. And so I think that doesn't justify his invasion of Ukraine, but it does, to me, say that, we have some responsibility for that by doing that. Maybe we should have held off and just seen if we could, reach some kind of an accommodation where if, we could get into this post-Cold War world and reach some kind of an agreement. But they pushed it.
But
They saw an advantage and they pushed right up to the border.
don't you think that it was, for example, Bill Clinton's mistake that he took the nukes away from Ukraine? I mean, Ukraine was an atomic power. I mean, they had nuclear weapons, and they could have created some balance at least with Russia. I mean, who can trust Russia? I mean, if someone like Putin, I mean, he kills his own people, the Russian people. I mean, who can trust such a person, right? I mean, the same problem I have seen, and I have my own relatives who are religious Muslims, and you see like every day Trump attacks Muslims and talk about Muslim ban, and yet they voted for him. I mean, that's one of the problems is that those people they vote against themselves. Like, how can you like? I even asked my uncle, like, how did you vote for someone who hates you? Like, he hates your religion. But I don't know.
Was
Like,
that
they
because of
just
Gaza? Did they vote for him because of Gaza? Was it an
uh,
anti-Biden vote?
no, I think many Muslims voted for Donald Trump because he's hate speech against transgenders, against LGBTQ, and many of them are conservative, they're not different from Christians. And I have seen Democrats commit such mistakes. Like they brought, I don't remember what location was that. Was it Minnesota or another state? Anyway, they brought someone as a mayor for an area. And then when he was elected, he said, I will not use the LGBTQ flag because it's against my religion. What the heck? I mean, we brought you here to protect people and to encourage people to respect each other, and yet they went uh, the other way. So, I mean, don't you see that it's not just Israel? What the problem is? I mean, the other side is also full of negative ideas or the stereotypes about LGBTQ, about non-religious people. Like they have in the tradition saying that there is no trust with someone who does not believe in God, for example. If someone is irreligious, then don't trust them. So they equalize morality with religion. I mean, don't you think that the problem and what's happening in Israel, and I agree with you that Netanyahu is a bad guy, but don't you see that the other guys too are making it worse like every day?
The other guy, you're talking
Yeah.
about Hamas, or who are you talking about? Who's the
Yeah,
other
like
guy?
the Muslim side, like not just Hamas. Like you see Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Iraq, all these countries, I mean, they are far, and yet they are sending rockets to Israel. So, I mean, you see how it's they want to make it like a religious war.
Yeah, well, to me, I look at the Middle East and it's like a two kids getting into a fight. The big fight, and we need an adult, like a parent, to step in and separate them. Obviously, what Hamas did, invading Israel and killing 1,200 people the way they did and taking the hostages, was terrible. And Israel has a right to respond in some way to that. But now it's gotten so out of hand. I mean, they're way beyond response, I think, and equitable. You just be the idea of eye for an eye. Everybody thinks it's kind of a brutal saying, but actually, what it originally meant was that, you did something to somebody, then an equal thing would come back to you. And I think, Israel has gone completely too far. It's like they're just pummeling. I mean, it's a slaughter. It's just totally inhumane. And now I think they've killed well, probably more than twice as many Lebanese. A lot of them, most women and children. The vast majority are women and children. Twice as many as Israelis were killed by Hamas. And all this is doing is creating another new generations of terrorists full of hatred and anger, and it's just making the whole situation worse. And unfortunately, the U.S. at times would step into these situations like the adult in the room and separate the warring kids and say, "Okay, let's talk about this." But he didn't. Biden went in and sided with one of the kids and helped them do even more. And so I think U.S. has really failed in this situation. And I think, I just feel like we don't have any more adults in the world now to kind of stand up and get control of these situations, because it's all these little kids fighting over all these different things. And I don't know. I mean, I think Israel has a right to respond, but they've gone way over it. I mean, the estimates of people dead in Gaza, what, 43,000 now? But, I think some people think it's in the hundreds of thousands, reputable organizations in England and whatnot put it much higher, because we don't know how many people are buried under the rubble. So the numbers, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's one of the most barbaric, and you get people coming back from that area talking about how absolutely barbaric it is. And I've never ever seen anything this bad. No medicine, no food, bombing continue. I don't know how anybody can live in that kind of situation. And I guess now they're just ethnic cleansing the whole northern part of Gaza. There's gonna be nobody left there. Um, I don't know. It's just kind of it's just terrible to watch this thing. So I think Israel has a right, but it's gone way too far. And Biden should have stopped them way earlier on, and we wouldn't be in this mess. Because who knows now? They're potentially going to have a war with Iran. Iran may, go after Iran's oil fields, and then Iran might go after Saudi Arabia's oil fields, and then, then what happens to the world economy? It's just whole thing's going to collapse. There's nothing good that's coming out of this, and it doesn't seem like there's any sanity around anymore. So,
Yeah, the problem is that they don't see the Jewish people as people. That's the problem. I mean, I have even heard in my own culture, in my own the area I used to live in, that somebody went and killed a rabbi who was just traveling from a village to another with his son. Somebody came and just killed him. That before Israel was around, and he just tossed the carcasses of the people he killed somewhere in a valley, and then just took the horse and his stuff. Anyway, and this guy wasn't punished for it just because he didn't kill a Muslim. Then it's okay. I mean, I see, okay, I mean, I understand, for example, when Bernie Sanders, who has a Jewish background, criticizes Israel, I understand that he is self-criticizing. But now I am doing the same on my side. I have a Muslim background. So whenever I criticize the Palestinians, the Arabs, and the Kurds and these cultures, they tell me, oh, you are racist. Come on, guys. I am from that culture. So it's my right to criticize them. So, um, yeah, I think, and I agree with you. Like Israel was stronger before this. The right wing religious people came to power, and now suddenly, like a gang of people was able to kill 1,200 Jewish people is inside Israel. Yeah, as you see, like so, the right will never make it better. Yeah, it will get worse all the time. So I agree with you on that point. Um,
Well, it seems, what we really have to do. We have to see that we're human beings first, and then all these Arab, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever, you know, labels we all have come in second, but we're first human beings. And so I think there's a higher moral order we have to aspire to from that higher view that we look at everybody as human beings first. And then you can and then if we can get rid of all this hatred we all have, all the different sects have hatreds for everybody else, blaming everybody else for their problem. If we can overcome that, then we can start seeing our differences as diversity and enriching. So you can learn a lot learning about other people and their cultures and everything and how their beliefs. And you can try different foods. You can partake in the other cultures, and they can partake in yours. And we can find it's actually a richness that we can all enjoy and benefit from rather than putting these barriers up that separate us from us. We're us and you're them over there, and you're the cause of all my problems, and your way is weird and I don't like it, and you're trying to threaten my religion or my this or my that, my way of life, and then they afraid you're going to threaten their way of life, and it's this mindset. We got to get out of this sectarian tribal mindset, I think, is really the cause of all these problems.
yes, exactly. And I mean, I wish to see Arabs and Jews and like everyone lives with everyone everywhere. But I mean, and this time, as Albert Einstein said, that if humanity goes to war again, the fourth world war would be with sticks. I mean, we will not even have weapons. I mean, we will go to
Sticks
the
and
Stone
stones.
Age. Yeah, if we survive.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 5 minutes. Do you want to focus on any point before we finish? Like we still have like 5, 6 minutes.
Um, uh, I don't know. I guess in some ways, when my book was talking about is I think we're kind of reaching the end of this modern age. When the modern age emerged out of the Middle Ages, and we had this birth of individuality and individual freedom and everything like that. And it was great. We want individual freedom and be able to pursue our happiness and be free to do what we want. But I think in the modern age, as it's gone on, this individual freedom has become like a prison. We've been imprisoned in our own ego, and we've gone too far, and we've lost the idea that we are still connected to other people and the planet and things like that. But now we're just living in this little bubble in our head, in our ego. And that's one of the criticisms that these traditionalists I talked about earlier have about the modern age, is it's become too individualistic. And so that we're become selfish and self-absorbed, and we don't care about anybody else but ourselves and how we get ahead. And we don't care what kind of effect we have on the planet or anything like that. And so I think that is what we need to overcome. And by getting trapped in our ego, it's like we've lost touch with deeper realities. Christopher Hedges, the former New York Times writer, he said, we've lost touch with the sacred. And even, a while back, the psychoanalyst Carl Jung thought the modern world was going to collapse because we've lost touch with the sacred. And if we lose touch with the sacred, then we're just stuck in our little egos, and it's all about me. And we become a kind of our own ego becomes our own God. And I think we're seeing the fallout of what Jung was talking about. Just looking around the world, it's all egos, egos battling egos, and we've lost touch with a deeper sacred reality, which is an interconnecting reality. Because at the core of everything, we're all united, we're all intertwined, we're all part of the same grand experience. My book, I talked about the magical universe. We're all part of this 13.8 billion year evolutionary sequence that has gone through all the stages of evolution up to human beings, which, as far as we know, are the highest creations yet. But it looks like we can't get over ourselves to move to the next stage, which is what we need to do, and what climate change is calling us to do, to overcome our self-interest, not to completely give it up. Obviously, the fact we're individuals, we have our own individual wants and needs is important, but not at the exclusion of everything. We have to find that balance of how we fit in with nature. And this whole thing of the climate change is because we've lost connection to the earth. And we don't realize that everything that sustains us comes from the earth, and we're destroying our habitat, which is about as stupid a thing as you can do. All the other species became extinct because they couldn't survive in changing environment. But we're going to be the first species, supposedly the most intelligent species, that from our own choices we'll kill ourselves. So it's just I think the only thing to save us is some kind of a consciousness revolution. We have to take the next stage up. And I think things have to get worse and worse and worse and worse until people realize that, hey, we need to help each other to get out of this mess. But unfortunately, we haven't reached that stage, and maybe we won't. I don't know. That's kind of
Yes.
the parting shot.
Well, thank you, Professor, for coming and to talk to my audience and to me. I enjoyed talking with you, and I believe that we will meet again, probably to go more in depth in the stuff you talked about. And I hope that, yeah, we meet up again soon.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed our conversation, and yeah, hope to talk again sometime.
Thank you.